Hi,
Hello, how are
like
you?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited for this.
Thank you. I'm actually a fan of yours. I've seen some of the custom stuff you've done with the Haro, hand painted
Oh,
stuff. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
thanks. I'm it's just so great because when I got to seeing these, my mind just went for the price? That's amazing.
I know, right? Bandai does it again. No, we've been very fortunate that we have a fantastic group of designers, and obviously, I mean, Gundam stuff kind of speaks for itself. But what we were able to do with these guys, we're pretty happy with. So we're really excited about these guys coming out in just a few short weeks.
I know, so I know you can get it on Amazon, but can you get the guys for like a retailer like Target or
Absolutely.
Walmart?
So starting in like October, and obviously depending on the retailer, and each retailer has a different set, right? So like your Target will be available like the first week of October, right? But then like the Target across the country might take like an extra couple of weeks, right? Obviously it's on Amazon. Hobby Lobby is going to have these things. So like it won't be difficult to find these things, right? If folks want to pre-order now, they can go on like Amazon and like GameStop.com and stuff like that. So it should be pretty easy to find these things. So it'll by the end of October, it'll be widely available pretty much in any retail store.
That's great. I'm so glad to see Gundam taking the Western market because I've been in this fandom for like the past 3 years, and
Huh?
just seeing the growth in the past year has been insane. Like Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart now. That's great.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of that has, well, there's lots of different factors, right? One is just people were staying at home more with like everything like shutting doors and COVID and all that kind of stuff. And so we know that from an industry, like puzzles has just been skyrocketing, right? And people like doing stuff. And very similar of just the activity of putting stuff together, like Gunpla kind of falls into that. So that's like one component. Another component is just the overall rise of anime in general, right? And this has been happening pre-COVID. It's been happening for the last several years. And make no mistake, like Gundam is anime. It's a whole lot more than that, but the overall style, right, is something that as more folks are becoming more aware of it and are getting used to it, I think all these things combined together has really led to this awareness and resurgence of really great Gundam stuff that either they're discovering for the first time, right? Or with like a new Netflix Hathaway and all the other stuff that's coming up. There's lots of things happening at the same time, which is a really exciting time to be a Gundam fan.
I teach kids, and I walked in one day and I had one with a little Mafty hoodie
Uh-huh.
from Hathaway's class, and one of the kids was like, "Hey, you walk Gundam," and I'm like, "How do you know?" What
Yeah,
do you, it's very exciting.
it
Um,
is.
so I know you have two lines
Mm-hmm.
coming out. Now, are they from the original series, or are we going to see branching off into Iron-Blooded Orphans
Right.
or C?
So let's do this. So let's tackle this line first, okay? And I have a close-up camera here, and I'll switch around. But so this first line here is called the Gundam Luminous line, right? And right now these guys are the old school, right? So we're looking at basically like the RX-78 from like Mobile Suit Gundam, like 1978 version, right?
Yeah.
And then we had the little Zaku's here, right? And what I'll do is I'm going to do a really bad job. A really bad job of moving these things accordingly so I can get a close-up camera of these things. So hold on, let's hope this works. And okay, so
Ah, there we go.
yeah, so if I look right here, right? So the cool thing about these guys, one is just the overall level of detail that these guys have, right? Now, granted, these things are $9.99, right? So like it's a perfect stocking stuffer, and it's kind of a gimme. Like the amount of detail that we're able to get, pretty cool. But the best part about these guys is that they light up, right? So what I'm gonna do, and I'm trying to like reach over here. So the top part comes off here. So if you can see,
Oh, nice.
there's like a little LED light, right? And I'll kind of pull it out here. The studio lights are pretty bright, so it's kind of hard to see it. But like here's a little light, and it has like little watch batteries, right? And he basically, when you put him back together again, will look like this guy, right? And the light shines through the eyes as well as the chest plates, right? And they're super bright, right? And if you look at what we're doing with like the Zaku, his eye lights up. So if you can sort of see up here, right, it's going to be like a super bright red. And even in a dimly lit room, it really like pops. It's really, really cool, right? And so the packaging, you know, looks really slick, right? So it comes in 4 different versions, right? So there's going to be the RX-72-8 with like the plasma cannon, and then you're going to have like half of this guy with like the beam saber, right? And then we have the Zaku's, and then we have like a Char Zaku here, which is my personal favorite, which just looks pretty cool.
That's mine too.
Yes, exactly, right? So so these guys are really pretty neat, right? This is the Luminous line. Again, $9.99. Kind of hard to beat that, right? And it comes in the classic styles, and everyone who's seen these things and they see them, and they see, especially when you turn on the light and with the batteries, it goes for like, you know, like a week, right? Before like it kind of peters out if you don't turn it off. But it's one of those really cool things you have on your desk or next on the dashboard of your car, whatever, right? But it really
for the price and it being $9.99 and you get all this articulation and the LEDs, I mean, I can just picture people. They should really just jump on this because it sounds great.
Yeah, it like I said, it's a gimme. Like if you're a Gundam fan at all, right? And if you're used to having your perfect grade models and your high grade models, you're going to have different versions of like the same Gundam frame, right? So this is just another way to express how much you love the brand, right? It's like you're going to have different versions. This is just a different version, right? So this is a Luminous line, right? So I'm going to scooch these guys over this way, right? And then over here, let me get over these. Let me make it all pretty. This is the Infinity line, right? Now, a little bit of a backstory for the Infinity line before I get in the close-up camera is there's a mobile game out there right now, right? Gunpla Modern Warfare, right? And it's been out for a couple years now, right? And the cool part about that actual game is that it takes the Gundam frames from all the different IP and sort of puts them in the same universe, right? So there's like 6 Gundam continuity universes out there, right? You have Iron Blooded Orphan, you have Wing, you have Seed, like all these things, right? So the mobile game, right, what it does is that it takes all the best Gundam frames put together, right, into single game. And you can see how well this frame battles against that frame, right? So in the Infinity line, what we've done is we've taken the most iconic Gundam frames from across all the different continuities, and we started with this line here, right? So with a little movie magic here, I am going to start with these guys.
Chibi stray from the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's start with this bad boy over here. Let me scooch over this way because it'll be a little bit easier. So obviously we have the red ashtray, right? Now, for all you fans out there, right, you know that there are only 5 of these built, right, in the Seed continuity, right? And you can only tell the difference by their different color, right? And there are prototypes made by the corporation, all these things like that. So it's really important that when we were deciding, you know, which styles to put forth, we really wanted to please the fans because it's really all about, like, you know, it's all about the fan. If we can't take care of the fan, then what are we doing anyway, right? So, like, these are your $12.99, right? And they have like 12 different points of articulation, right? Which is pretty cool, right? So this is the ashtray frame, right? And then if I scooch over this way more, right? We're going to have our wing frame, right? From Gundam Wing, early 90s, right? So if I can get him even closer here, right? Now,
That's some nice details on there.
Yeah, what's really cool about these guys is that each piece is interchangeable with every other piece. So if I wanted to, I could switch out his head, his torso, his legs, right? Because that's sort of the whole experience, right? So that's Wing Gundam, right? Then we have over here our classic RX-78, right? You're gonna have to have him, right? And again, like if you want to move his legs and you want to put him on another Gundam frame, you can do that, right? So And that's pretty much the overall style of how these things are used, because you don't want to just build them. You want to show them off and customize them, right? Because that's kind of the whole point of why we're sort of into this vocation, if you so to speak.
It's a fun way to like kit bash.
Uh-huh.
And make your own without actually having to go out and buy the models.
Exactly. And then, right, super cool on this side, if I can put him into frame, and over here, we have the Artemis frame. Now, this is specifically from the mobile game, right? So it has like the solar panels here. It has a satellite cannon, that huge big thing sticking out of his back, right? And so just, again, like, the level of detail of these guys is fantastic, right?
Yeah, I mean, for $12.99, the detail grade with 12 points of articulation, that's very nice.
And then my personal favorite right here, if I can get him into frame, right? So here's a Baratos frame from Iron Blooded Orphans, right? Like,
everybody loves the Barbie.
I know, right? Super cool. And besides having every part interchangeable with every other part, in this first wave, when you buy them, each of them comes with a Build-A-Figure part to build the Zaku over here, right? So this guy right here, you cannot buy separately in stores, right? This guy, like, his left leg comes with like this guy over here, right? And his head comes with like another one. So when you buy all 5, you can actually put them all together to make the Zaku, and the Zaku parts fit every other part. So if I wanted to, I could put the arm on the Artemis, right? Or I can put the leg onto the Baratos frame, right? So we're really, really excited. These things are, they're nice and chunky. They're not like lightweight at all. So when I first got them, because I've been a Gundam fan forever, and I'm like, okay, like for $12.99, what am I gonna get, right? Like, how detailed are these things going to be? I mean, because Lord knows we've all spent more money than we should, right, on building stuff and time and effort. So when I first saw these guys, I'm like, okay, let's see. And so when I first saw the models a couple months ago, and then I saw final production, which are like these guys right here, I'm like, good job, guys. They did a fantastic job. So I think for a first offering, right, it's a pretty strong one. And we're going to make more of these, right? And I already know secretly what are the next ones that are going to happen in the next wave, right? But I think as a good start, a lot of fans are going to be happy with the selection that we have right here.
I mean, it looks fun. And like, knowing the people I know and all that is for the price and the articulation, we're gonna love it. I mean, interchangeable parts you can kit back, like a Megazoid.
Yeah.
You can just power range it into something great.
Yeah, I think for fans of all ages, right? So obviously, right, and here's, you know what, I'm gonna do this. This is crazy. So I'm gonna do a close up here, right? So, and I'll show you, because like, well, how does the detail actually compare to something else? So if I move over here, right, and I'm gonna kind of zoom in on the Baratos frame, right? So here's our Baratos frame right here, right? Now, over here, this is actual Gunpla, right? Like, this is high grade, right? So if you look at, you know, the level of detail, right, it shouldn't shock anybody. But if we put them like right next to each other, the level of
details are nice.
Yeah, it's not that far off. I mean, granted, this has like 300 pieces, right? And this has like basically like, you know, your arms and legs and the head and the torso. But even a side by side, the camera's kind of backwards here, but still, like, this is the $12.99. This is more than $12.99, right? So
figure-wise, that's great.
Yeah,
for just an action figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's a great entry point for folks who are discovering Gundam for the first time, right? And part of what we want and what we're encouraging fans to do when this thing happens is, because you can mix and match the pieces, we're asking fans, what can you come up with, right? Like, what's the best looking frame that you can do knowing that all these pieces are interchangeable, right? Like, what could you do with like the torso of the Baratos frame with like the Artemis solar panels, right? And what can you do with the RX-7028 legs that you couldn't do with the Astray, right? So there's all these different iterations and permutations. And so, you know, we've played around in the office in terms of what we think looks cool. But, you know, there's going to be a fan out there once they get this, they're going to be like, check this out. And they'll share it and customize it because that's what these guys are really meant to do in the first place.
I mean, I'm excited to see what I can do with these.
I would love to see what you can do with these things.
Like, just putting it together and the details, because it's fun to just be able to take it apart. You can't do that with most action figures.
That's right.
Unfortunately, without breaking things. And just to put them back in together and just build something uniquely your own, I think that's going to be great for new entry people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I know when I went looking for Gundam the first time, I looked at the kit and I'm like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's entry level, I think this is going to be a great next step before they actually bust open a kit.
Right. And that's sort of our plan. Our plan is, right, so obviously there are Gundam fans out there, right? And when they see this, they're going to be like, okay, I know what this is, right? And then they're going to pick up the package and they're going to look at it and they're going to be like, oh, okay, it's not a kit, right? It's an action figure, kind of like Gundam Universe, right? Yeah. But you can switch out the parts. And they're like, okay, that's interesting, right? And what's going to happen eventually is folks like you are going to see, what can I do to customize it, right? Am I going to have my detail pen? What am I going to do? And I can't wait to see what fans are doing. So that's like first step, right? And so for folks who are not super into the actual model kits and they have this, they can start enjoying, right, Gundam and getting introduced to the property. And they're saying like, oh, the Artemis, like, what's this one about? Or like, I never saw Gundam Seed. So what's with the Astray frame, right? Or I never saw Wing, but I heard about it, right? And so there's lots of different entry points, not just into the content, right? But into the overall, like, there's so many different kinds of Gundam that are out there, right? And it's only a matter of time before they want another one, and then they watch the show, and then the show's like, oh, this is great, and then they'll find their first kit, right? And then they'll put the first kit, and then they'll be hooked.
I mean, I can't guarantee you that paint will not touch those after I'm done with them. But I think it's just great. I mean, they're fun. They look fun. The price is great. I mean, you got $9.99 and $12.99. So, how did you guys just come up with like the rudimentary ideas for these? If you don't mind me asking.
No, and this is what I love doing this because I mean, they all look cool, right? But it's what's under the hood. It's what's the thought process behind this, right? So, and you sort of have to start with why Gundam is popular even in the first place, right? So if you go back to like 1978, right, when this whole Gundam thing started, there were already a lot of super robot anime that were out there, right? And the anime of these like super robots, the robots did stuff that was physically impossible. Like they grew or they turned into different forms of matter, right? And it was sort of kind of weird and out there. And so when Mobile Suit Gundam first started, right, it became more realistic within its own world, right? And I tell folks that like these aren't robots, right? Like Transformers are robots, right? They have their own personalities and will. These are fighter jets with arms and legs, which means that the story is about the pilots. It's not about the suits, right? It's about these kids who are put in this impossible situation, right? And it really is a drama about these characters in these mobile suits that just happens to move the drama forward, right? And it's long form content and there are real consequences. I mean, as a kid, I remember watching this and like people died. And I'm like, what? Like someone died and they never came back? Like it doesn't pander to kids. Right? Like this is more mature content. And when you get attached to these characters and these things have been going for 40 odd years now, I think that's one of the testaments of why Gundam is so popular because there's lots of other mech stuff out there, right? But this has lasted over the decades, right? And it's branched off into different storylines and continuities. And because of that, when part of Bandai, which actually makes the actual Gunpla itself, there's tons of different options available, right? And so when we started thinking like, well, we're going to make this at a $12.99 price point, what are the first frames that we're going to put up in the first place, right? So there's a couple that are kind of gimmies, right? So like the RX-78, you have to, right? Like if it's the first one, that's the one that started it all. So that's sort of a no-brainer, right? And then we're saying like, well, what's the next kind of most popular one? And then we're like, well, you have like the Wing Gundam, right? Because that's the one that, at least for Western audiences, that most folks kind of knew already, right? And so then you started kind of getting into like, well, then what do we do next, right? And like what's current now? And then we have like the Baratos Frame here from the Netflix, right? And so what's important to us is we want to make it accessible so that folks recognize like, oh, I've kind of seen that. But then we also kind of want to go deep, right, to satisfy the fans. And so we have like the Astray, right? Most folks who aren't Gundam fans they don't understand what the Astray is, right? But for fans who do, it'd be like, okay, that's cool, right? Or if we're looking at the Artemis, which really only appears in the mobile game, right? It's finding that balance of what's on TV, right, versus what do you have to look for, right? And as we continue to have more waves, right, there's tons of different Gundam frames that are out there in the first place, right? So it's just like, how broad versus deep do we go? Knowing that with every new figure that we add to this wave, you're going to be able to switch out the parts as well, right? So you could probably think off the top of your head, if there's going to be 3 more that we're adding to this, right, or 5 more, what would those Gundams be, right? And I could probably guarantee you 3 out of the 5 you're thinking of, we're probably going to do, right? I'm not going to say it on the air.
Hoping.
Right. But just imagine your favorite Gundam that appears in the next wave, knowing that you can switch out the body parts with these as well, right? So for every new one coming in, there's all these other combinations that we can do, which is what we were going for in the first place, right? So it's a function of what are people going to recognize, what are the fans going to appreciate, and then from a purely aesthetic point of view, what's just going to look cool in a package, right? Whether it's deep or not, if it's a nice chunky build, right? Or if it's something that really stands out or a different color scheme that is completely out there, right? That would be a candidate for what we have here just to make the overall experience of customizing as enjoyable as possible.
I love the idea and I love these little figures. I think they're so cool. And especially with the ones that light up. Mm-hmm. I love the packaging on the ones that light up. That is a very aesthetically pleasing package.
Yeah, like this one, right? Like, it looks pretty cool. And then, you know what? I didn't even show you. I'm going to do a no-no. I'm going to run off frame real quick because here is the packaging for the Infinity line. So let me kind of do a little close-up here again. Here. So, like, this is what the packaging is going to look like.
Nice.
So, if you can see here, right? So the Zaku head's right here, and you see what you're kind of getting right here. And then the back, it actually shows you, oh, if you collect all of them, you can then build the Zaku, right? And they have, and here's an example of how you can sort of customize stuff. So, packaging is half the battle.
Great. Yeah. I really just think that's great. I mean, it's enough to catch my eye if I walked by it. Mm-hmm. Just like adding in like the extra part or it lights up. It's enough to hook and sink me. Yeah. Like, I have action figures. And packaging's one of those things like, if I don't like the package, then I'm not really going to be interested in the figure. But this is fun. It hooked me. And I love the concept. And I'm really hoping you guys bring in the kits that I'm hoping you bring in. Uh-huh. I'm just very excited for it. I think it's fun.
That's great. Well, it's funny. The thing with like action figures, and I have a theory that it actually says more about the person who buys it than the actual figure itself, right? So I see you have stuff in the background, right? And that's a reflection of who you are and all the stuff that you have, right? If you look at my desk, I have certain things that if someone sees those things, it's already a reflection of who I am, right? And so the person who buys these things, whether they're getting into it for the first time or this is the 8th version of the RX-78 that they had, right? They are enhancing their own self-reflection by the stuff that they're going to get, right? Which I think is pretty cool because it's, nobody is, buying action figures of shows that they've only seen once or twice, right? Like
Oh yeah.
people go to the movies, right? But like watching anime, like it's a behavior. It's something that you do and you keep up with it, right? And it's like dozens and hundreds of hours that you're watching.
It's funny enough because I actually stumbled upon Gundam looking for Pacific Rim stuff.
Okay.
And at that point, I bought the little model kit, and then I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then I got hooked on the shows. And it's been a downward spiral ever since. You can't follow the background. But it's fun. It's great. I just love these things.
Yeah. We're making more. So yeah, I think these are going to do quite well. Fans are already talking about them, right? And we want to make sure that we are paving a steady runway for the release of the live action Gundam movie that's going to be coming in a few years, right? So like it's out there. It's not a corporate secret. Like there's already like articles about it and they already have like the director. So it's going to be like, imagine this, right? And here's how I would sort of contextualize it. Imagine the detail of what you saw in the movie Pacific Rim, right? And the Jaegers fighting with the speed and articulation that Transformers have, right? Because the Jaegers in the movie, they were kind of slow, right? And you can sort of see those punches coming. But then Transformers, they're rolling around. So you combine those things together because they actually are vehicles and tools in a live action Gundam movie. Like,
I'm so excited for it.
Yes. Right. So
like I'm hoping they bring it around here.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is our first step to let the public know, like, one, if you're not aware of it already, what is this Gundam thing that's out there, right? Because unlike the model kits that are going to be at like hobby shops and actually even starting to get into Target now, as we get these things more and more into mainstream stores, people are going to say like, oh, what's that thing over there? Oh, Gundam, I've kind of heard of it, right? And then a year and a half from now, you're going to start seeing coming soon the trailers, the Gundam movie in 2023, 2024.
Especially after the Olympics, featuring the big statues, the unicorn and
there's 4 of them out there right now that are 1-to-1 scale that if you've ever seen them, like pretty neat, right? It's not like we're doing this just because it's fun, right? It is. But it really is about making a global Gundam statement because if you look at the property, it's lasted for like 40 years, right? It started the whole, we're going to make the show that launched the toy that makes the show stronger, right? And it starts this feedback loop. And that's sort of what started the industry, right? And Gundam basically is Bandai, right? Like that's us. As pure as it can be. So, it's a fantastic place to be at Bandai right now, and we know there's a lot of great things coming in the future, so we're really excited to see how these guys are going to do.
I mean, especially since how it's been hitting the Western market.
Mm-hmm.
That's just great. I can't wait to see what else is going to go on and what's going out in the future.
Yeah, we have a couple. I'm sure we'll talk again. We have a couple things on the horizon that I think kind of up your alley. That I think once we show them, you'll be happy with what we're doing.
Oh, I can't wait. It's a very eager time for me. I woke up this morning and I'm like, I get to talk about model kits.
Right? We could be selling cat food, right? So exactly.
Yeah. But I think it's great. I mean, I can't wait. Just looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, make sure that you're a fan and yourself, you follow us on social and Instagram and Twitter because we'll have little sneak peeks and announcements of what's coming next and where you can buy them. And there's some pretty cool stuff that we've already seen people do with these and some photos that just look outstanding. Like you look at them and be like, oh my gosh, like it's those things done with like professional photographers and their own settings. Because, right, like that's why we do this, right? You don't buy these and then put them in a drawer, right? You display them. They're pieces of art, right? And pieces of art need to be appreciated. And as a result of that, people do their own little techniques and twists. And basically that's what these things are ideal for.
I just can't wait to just get my hands on it and just see what I can do. Cause my mind's already running. The hamster wheel is going. I can't wait for it.